Hey everybody, welcome back to the Behind Enemy Lines podcast where you get all your Habs content right in the Toronto Maple Leafs backyard. We're down in Behind Enemy Lines. As always, I want to welcome everybody to our production here and riding shotgun is Steve. Take her away, Steve.
Well, thanks for having me back again. I guess episode one was a hit. We went from two viewers to six, so
Woo!
300% increase.
Yeah.
It's got to be something night one. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But thanks for those choosing to listen at home and follow along. And we hope we see you back each and every episode. And let's dig into some Go Habs Go.
Alrighty, so today's topic is going to be our predictions for this year's season standings, where each team finishes. We're just gonna do the Eastern Conference this year because nobody really cares about the Western Conference. Um, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start off as always with our Habs trivia. Uh, so go ahead with the trivia, Steve.
So, we're all pumped and excited for what is going to be hopefully in a new and improved season. We'll start off a little bit better and not have to scramble. That being the case, I think we can all say we're on the upside of the trend. So let's go back and ask, when was the last time the Montreal Canadiens won a regular division title?
Okay,
Last
and
regular season title for the Montreal Canadiens. What year?
division win. Okay. Bonus points if you can tell us where they finished in the division, the conference, and overall in the NHL. How about that
Without
one?
without using Chat GPT, Google, or
Yeah.
throwback to Go Ask Jeeves, we'll keep him out of that as well too.
Yeah.
But let's see if we got some diehards in the room.
Okay. So let's dive right into it. Uh, Last year's standings. I'm just going to bring it up on the screen here real quick. Put it up so viewers can see last year's standings. Give a quick shout out to Hockey DB for allowing us to steal their content and put it up on.
It's skillfully borrowing today.
Yeah, skillfully borrowing. Okay, so as you can see, well, last year's standings for the conference and the division there.
So let's just talk about it while you're putting it up there. So, Toronto won the division, 108 points. Tampa right behind them at 102. Florida at 98. Ottawa on their tails at 97. Montreal behind them at 91. We have Detroit with 86. Buffalo 79, and Boston rounding out the division with 76 points. So Montreal made a horrendous effort. We decided to spot the rest of the division, probably 15 points. And if memory serves me right, I think even into the second week of December, we were in the Futility Bowl with the Chicago Blackhawks, and it wasn't looking good.
Mhm.
We had a couple injuries. We just had a couple of pucks not bounce our way, but we can't always use that as an excuse. I know we like to, because we don't always like to give kudos where kudos are. We just were not playing good hockey, and it wasn't just good hockey from a statistical standpoint, but it's everything inside the statistics. We were not getting shots on goal. We'd be down 15-3 shots on goal at the end of the first period, down two goals. When the other teams got more goals than we do shots, we put ourselves in a bad position more nights than not. Luckily, Sam Montembeault really stepped into his own and became that 30-win goalie that we hoped and prayed he would be, and statistically he got there. That emergence helped catapult us up the standings as we found a groove.
Yeah, it wasn't really a good start to the year last year, and I think you're right. I think it was well into probably the end of December where we were in the basement looking for the furnace because things were getting ready to blow up. I mean, it started out bad, but it seemed like once December rolled around, and then especially after the Four Nations break, I think Montreal had probably the second best record in the league after the Four Nations break, I believe.
Yeah, we were right up there. I mean, we were contending with the best teams more nights than not,
Mhm.
and we strung together, that 6 wins in 7 games, and then points in 18 of 21 games, and
Yeah.
those are important things, but we can't put ourselves in the train tracks looking head on at the oncoming train every year. Something's got to break.
Yeah, so if you take it in perspective, if you think October, November, December last year, right? Because realistically, up until Christmas, it was looking pretty bleak. But if they had of say had even five more wins, how much of a difference would that have made in the standings? Like you got to imagine, like we had
Well,
94 points, I believe, correct?
91.
91 points. Five more wins,
Five more wins
that's
is
101 points, right? That
yeah,
makes a huge
yeah.
difference.
Yeah, and that being said, I mean, we could have got 3 or 4 wins early and another two later in the season, but we could have lost a couple of those games as well. I mean, every team wins games that they shouldn't, and they lose games that they should have won. But we got to do a better job competing game one. Last year we shut out Toronto, I think 2-0 opening night. Monty started the year strong with a shutout, and you always think this is the year. I sound like a lame Maple Leafs fan. There's always next year,
Yeah,
which is their motto. I think that's actually emblazoned on the front of their jerseys this year.
yeah.
But we can't look at one game. We got to start early. We got to start getting points on the board, and we got to start building momentum.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not sure, like, if you want to do a breakdown of team by team, or do you want to just do an overall division, or how do you want to do it?
Well, I mean, we can talk about the conference as a whole, but let's just talk about our division. We can break down the two divisions as to 1 through 8. Obviously, I'm not as smart as the guys on that idiotic Toronto Sports Network channel that all us Hab fans have grown to hate.
Yeah,
When we're at part of Toronto Sports that either, because I think there's only one team in the NHL if you watch their feed. So I don't have Jeff O'Neill intelligence. Shout out to the O Dog for being a true homer. But we got to look at realistically. So where does that leave us? I think the team to beat in our division is going to be Tampa Bay, and I know some people may not agree with that. Tampa is still the same team that trucks out the same good players. You and I were talking off air. We talked about Kucherov. I think he could be still the most skilled, uh, possibly underrated player in the conference.
mhm,
I know he is probably in our division. When Cooch wants to play, that dirty Ruski is dynamite.
mhm,
When he doesn't want to play, that dirty Ruski is taking knees out and hitting you from behind and
mhm.
causing a different impact. The bottom line, he still puts up his 100+ points,
Yeah,
and he's in it every day. He's in
yeah.
every play, every game.
And he kind of has the comparison, and when I say that, the Russian effect. Think of all the nights that Kovalev when he was playing, and not just with Montreal, but other teams. But I think maybe I noticed it more in Montreal. You'd have nights where you would think there's an electric shock in the seats, and you'd have people jumping because of the things he could do with the puck, and then you'd have other nights you'd be pulling your hair out because where is he? I think
Right.
Kucherov has very similar attributes when he wants to play. Like you say, he's lights out and probably the most underrated guy in the NHL. But if he decides he's thinking about the beers after the game before the puck drops, then you're gonna have some long nights.
Yeah, I was down in Tampa a couple of years ago. See a Montreal Tampa game. It was in March, and there was stretches where he was invisible.
Hmm.
But the second he gets one break, it's the puck's in the back of the net and his name's all over the score sheet.
Hmm.
So he can skate up and down the frozen rideau, most nights in Quebec and not be seen. But when he
Hmm.
wants to be seen, it's something else. So you look at the returning cast there. You've got Vasilevsky, probably a full healthy year this year. I know he battled back injuries last year, and Hedman's in the Norris Trophy race every year. You've got two standovers from the Four Nations Cup team in Sorelli and Hagel, and you can't count them out. Cooper's one of the best coaches in the NHL, and he seems to get the most out of the underrated player.
Yeah.
So I still see them being the division leader this year. Florida, I think, takes a small step back. Training camp was not nice to them this year. When you lose Barkov, he's out for at least the regular season. Probably that lucky tax-free state that miraculously he'll be healed in 3 extra legs and skating in the playoffs, scoring 10 points in his first game.
Yeah.
But they can't have Kachuk out till Christmas and Barkov out and still expect to be that whole big division leader again.
Yeah, they're not gonna maintain their spot. And I don't think you're saying they're not a good team. I know I'm not saying that. They are still a good team, but that's two of their big pieces of the puzzle that are out for an extended period of time. And as Montreal fans, we've experienced that all too much in the last few years of having big pieces lost to injury.
Right. And they're a team that, they got Marchand at the trade deadline last year and love him or hate him, he still puts up points. He's still effective. And this year in Florida, he's probably a number two player, a line number two or a number three line, depending on who he gets matched up with. Not a bad guy to have on your third line. That's he's not going to score you the 90 points that he used to, but he is still an effective hockey player.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
so
And
so
I think it's interesting that to just work off a point you brought up about him being a third line guy, I think players in their sunset years, if used correctly, like let's be realistic, Marchand is an effective player. We all hate him. We all love to hate him. We'd all love to have him on our team. But if he's used correctly with his age and his skill and what he brings, he can be very, very effective as a third line guy.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that Florida has talent. Maurice, again, another guy who gets a lot out of his players. So I still think they're going to be up there. They're the tax-free state. They can go and replace Barkov tomorrow. They don't have to be cap compliant until the playoffs if he comes back. And if not, they can put all his money on LTIR and find a way. Bobrovsky was hot. He's been on a nice 2-year run for them. So there's no reason to believe that that trend won't continue. So that the state of Florida, I still think takes the top two spots in the division.
Uh,
That leads us to spots 3, 4, and 5, and I think
Let
that's
me, can I just, I want to interject something real quick here about Florida before you go on to the next one.
sure.
What's your opinion on the fatigue factor? Because Florida winning, 2 years in a row, they've played a lot of games, and that's going to catch up with you.
It does, and I think this is a year where they are going to have to use their depth more so than anything else. You saw the other night they had the last exhibition game, 300 and some odd penalty minutes. It's clear that those two teams hate each other, but even in a preseason game, they're willing blood, sweat, and tears to make sure that they are there with their compatriots across the state.
Mhm.
So I think they, depend on the third and fourth line. Evan Rodriguez, another guy that comes to mind who is not my favorite player, but he gets big goals and gets points when he can. And they're not going to win games 6-1, 6-2 like they used to, but I think they have enough talent to grind out enough wins. Bobrovsky may be the modern day Carey Price now at this point. If his team is letting him down, he's still got enough talent to carry us through.
To carry the load. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to touch base with that real quick before we moved on to 3 and 4.
Well, we'll go 3, 4, and 5. Just because I think it comes down to the Battle of Ontario. So I'm gonna call Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal in a very tight market at 3, 4, and 5. Do I have enough gumption to put Montreal 3? I think Montreal and Toronto, I'm gonna call them a tie. I'm gonna say at the end of the regular season, they're dead even. And I'm gonna put Ottawa probably within 5 points of them all. So I think this could be who gets hot late. Does one team have enough cap room to make a difference to put them over the top? But at this point, I'd almost be willing to say Montreal and Toronto will tie for 3, and Ottawa will come in at 5.
Uh, I'm very close to what you're thinking. I think it will be close, but I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. This is my hot take for this episode. Montreal will finish ahead of Toronto in the standings because if you look at the additions and subtractions Montreal have had and the additions and subtractions that Toronto has had, I think Montreal, for probably an easier way to put it, I think Montreal improved 5 wins, and I think Toronto is 5 wins worse than they were last year. So quick, simple math tells you that Montreal should finish ahead of Toronto in the standings, but I think Ottawa is right there as well. And either way, I think it's going to be within a few points. You might be looking at 101, 199 points for each of the teams, in that range, like that closeness. And like you say, the battle, it's going to be tight right down to the end.
Is that South Oshawa math included in that for a split plus five minus five or
Yeah, yeah,
okay?
yeah.
The she diggity math is still
Shout
going to
out to
add
the
to,
Schwa.
yeah, yeah, back to where we're from. Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about the bottom feeders. We've done the top five. I still think Detroit comes in at six. Iserman has done a decent job, but they're stuck in the rut of a rebuild. They brought in five or six players last year, didn't work out. They seem to have a goalie carousel. This year they've got Gibson in net. They're trying. I mean, they're trying, right? They get that participation medal. Thanks for coming out. You tried. Good job. But at some point, I still think they're miles behind. Could they contend? Maybe. Maybe they're the surprise team that jumps up like we did last year. I still have them sitting six. They will be in tight with Buffalo in seven, and unfortunately, that leaves the Bruins to finish dead last in the division one more time. Do I think the parity from top to bottom in our division is a lot closer? Absolutely. We seem to have the toughest division in hockey. We don't have the team that gets 25 wins. Like that's long gone. Our divisional rivalries are huge. Montreal gets the games against Toronto and Boston. They're huge, and we play them 5 and 6 times a piece. So there's 10% of our season against two teams. And again, you go back to the old Adams division days and Boston and Buffalo. They're still hated teams. They're still, if you bleed red, white, and blue, you hate the black and gold.
Mhm.
You don't like that ugly blue saber unless it's a black, white, and red saber.
Mhm.
They've changed that up because they don't have an identity. So maybe they should go to orange and yellow like a North Tonawanda townhouse on fire.
Mhm.
But, that's a dumpster fire of a franchise. Maybe they turn the corner. Who's to
Yeah,
say?
yeah. I see. I don't see it happen. I have a jaded opinion of Buffalo. Like if you just look at everything they do in sports, they just seem to manage to blow it. Ignite the dumpster fire, as you say. Uh, I mean, for all the Bills fans out there, I know we're sort of getting off the sport, but the Buffalo Bills, the same thing. They seem to be the Toronto Maple Leafs of the NFL. They just manage to choke no matter how they put it together. But the Sabres, it just seems it doesn't matter what they do. They just find a way to blow it. So, I mean, I agree with you for the bottom feeders. If it wasn't for the fact that Boston is going to be so bad this year, I'd put Buffalo last, but I just think Boston is a train wreck waiting to happen. And in fairness to Boston, they're going through their rebuild phase, and we've been there, and it's going to take some time. But if not for Boston, I think Buffalo is just be the worst mess.
Yeah, and again, Sweeney has done a decent job with the Bruins over the years. He's kept them competitive. He's recognized that it is business. You let go Marchand, it's business. You hope you get assets back in return and you can develop those assets. So time will tell. You
Yeah,
know,
it's time. It's time. Yeah.
yeah, this is long gone because of the salary cap, the salary floor, all the things that we have to
Yeah.
accommodate for in the league now. It's harder to do it quick.
Yeah.
No,
And I think
because
in fairness to the fans though, like and listen, as Montreal fans, we all hear it, and I'm sure every team hears it. Oh, let's rebuild. No, let's retool. We don't need to. We're still competitive. We can still do this. We can still do that. I think as a team, Montreal did it 3 years ago, I believe it was 4 years ago. Boston's doing it now. I think you do your fans a disservice if you don't recognize, hey, it's time to tear it down and rebuild. And I think you look at the excitement and the phase we're in now. You know, teams go through 2 or 3 years of pain, but you have to do that. You have to go through that pain to get the enjoyment that comes, and it comes longer term. If you do these quick fixes, quick turnarounds, it's only a quick solution for a quick time. You do a tear down and a rebuild, it lasts a lot longer.
well, I mean that's the goal, right? We saw that unfortunately with the blue and white guys in our division.
Mhm.
They got lucky with Austin Matthews as a first pick,
Mhm.
Mitch Marner, Willie Nylander. They got some guys, and Toronto is a market that love them or hate them, and let's be honest, we hate them. And we have to watch that dribble on TV all the time about playing in the parade. I think they're sold out the parade tickets already this year,
Yeah,
and they haven't even played a game.
yeah.
But they seem to still draw. That market seems to draw. The hometown players want to come back. Pajama Boy came back. He's still in his
Yeah.
pajamas because they can't get out of the second round. You
Yeah.
know, the things don't change.
No,
We
no.
don't get so much of that with the French Canadian kids that want to come back. And if we do, they're not the ones you want back. You know, at the stages of their career, we don't get the Vinny LaCavalier or the Marty St. Louis being French Canadian kids coming at the prime of their career.
Mhm.
Hopefully, with Marty in charge as a coach and respect that he's earned from his players, hopefully we're starting to see that. You
Yeah.
know, again, we get American kids. Caulfield signs 8 years. Slavkovsky comes over from 8 years. Suzuki, 8 years. Hopefully Hudson's in that group as well.
Mhm.
And Dobson's now here 8 years. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a difference. There's a changing of the guard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's changed? You know, let's talk about changes before we talk about the other conference.
Mhm.
We brought in some players. We lost some players.
Yeah.
Um, we lost Mike Pizzetta. I think Mike Pizzetta lost Mike Pizzetta. I don't think he knows where his
Yeah.
skates are. At
Yeah.
times, I thought he was out there on kids' bob skates last year.
Yeah.
He played with a lot of energy. I
Yeah.
think it didn't get him anything. You know, no goals last year.
Mhm.
And, you know, you want to see a guy succeed. Everybody loves his heart and his soul, but at the end of the day, it's about results.
Yeah.
So he's
And
gone.
and I am a big Mike Pizzetta fan, so I don't want to tear the guy down too bad, but I mean, you got to be realistic as well. As much as I was a fan, I thought he was a good media guy. He was always good for a soundbite. He was always good for a clip. And, if you wanted to go out and stir stuff up, you give him the tap on the shoulder and he'd run headfirst through the boards to do whatever it took. But along with that came some very, very stupid mistakes that cost him as much too, right? So,
Yeah, and you wanted him to be more of an agitator, like an old Kenny Linsman kind of
mhm,
guy, and he just didn't have it. You know, once the sheriff came to town, I
mhm.
I think he forgot that he could be just as aggressive. You know, and that's a big part of his game that if he's not doing it, he doesn't have a role.
Yeah, he's not
You know,
useful. If he's not in his wheelhouse, the wheel's off the wagon.
and he's moved on, greener pastures, or bluer pastures apparently. Hometown
Mhm,
kid from Ontario, gone back to the Maple Leafs,
mhm.
signed a 1 year deal there, and they've already put him on waivers, so go
Yeah,
figure.
yeah,
I guess we weren't wrong.
yeah.
Who else have we brought in? We made a trade, big draft day trade. We brought in Noah Dobson. He's a guy that eats minutes. He's a great guy in the power play. Whether he's a power play one or a power play two guy, he's going to help us. He's going to give us that extra top four depth guy that we've been missing. We made the trade. Sad to see Logan Mayu go, but we brought in Zach Bolduc, and a guy 19 goals, plays a little bit of moxie. Hopefully, a hometown kid. He wants to get over the hump. Another hometown kid, Joe Valeno, 300 NHL games, should help on the penalty kill part of special teams. And again, a guy who had a lot riding on talent when he was draft eligible, just hasn't put it together. Let's hope he can be a reliable fourth line guy and play up in the lineup when we need him. And then the other two additions, and I'm going to call them additions for the sake of information. Ivan Demidov came over and played a handful of games, not enough to say plus or minus 5 wins, but I think we can all ride the train of emotion. And let's be honest, not many kids come into Montreal as 19-year-olds and put on a show with the whole world watching. And he
Mhm.
didn't disappoint.
No, it
And
was pretty electric.
yeah, and he scores his goal, he hears his name called across the PA, and he's on the bench and he's wide-eyed and he's
Mhm.
just blown away. And what a 2 week ride that kid had.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Just
again,
interject real quick, Steve. I watched a reel. I don't remember where I seen it from, so I mean, I wish I could give credit out to whoever made it, but they were doing interviews that night of people outside the Bell Center and in the hotels and the apartments and the condos next to the Bell Center. They could hear the fans inside yelling. It was that loud. The people outside the building could hear the noise inside. They were raising the roof. And I mean, you've heard many people saying that were in there, they could feel the building shake, literally.
yeah, I mean, we've been there together. We've been there. I mean, it's electric when that building's pumping. It's the Mecca. I don't care what those blue and white trolls say. Montreal is the Mecca, the history, the gods of the
Mhm.
forum. I mean, it's there. You know, the
Mhm.
legends that have played in that sweater. You know, Mrs. Bellevaux still goes there. It
Mhm.
doesn't get any more electric.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so anyways, Demidov and Oliver Kapanen. You know,
Mhm.
so played a handful of games for us. Looks to be more penciled in for opening lineup as a regular.
Mhm.
Uh, Came over from Europe, obviously Swedish, and played over there. A guy who's got great upside, got great skating,
Mhm.
and I think could maybe find a balance with either Line A or Demidov, depending on where they want to put him in the lineup.
Mhm.
So it should help solidify our top nine or our bottom six, however you want to look at it.
Mhm.
And two other names that we didn't talk about leaving were Joel Armia and Christian Dvorak.
Mhm.
I personally was a big Devo fan.
Mhm.
He didn't produce a lot of points, but shorthanded on the penalty kill and a guy in the face-off dot. It is what we needed him to do is win faceoffs.
Mhm.
You know, so that's kind of we hope that the Joe Veleno factor takes over and he can win those faceoffs. But overall, the talent out versus the talent in. We're way ahead. We're miles ahead.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree. I think uh I know you said you liked Dvorak. I honestly I wasn't a big fan, but he was fantastic on the face-off. I think he was in the 55-60% range on his wins. Armia, and again, I don't know if it maybe not just a Russian thing, European, sometimes he'd be out there lights out. Great defender, could grind in the corner to get you the puck, whatever, but then there'd just be nights where, you know, is he even on the team? Because he's nowhere to be found, right? And I think my
Boards weren't there. He
frustrations
would have.
used to
The
boil
boards weren't there. He
over.
kind of kept skating.
Yeah.
You
So,
know.
but I would agree. I think the additions we've made, Valeno, and then I know in our own personal discussions you've mentioned several times about those 300 games of experience he has is a big deal, and I think he's a player who snake bitten with an injury that didn't pan out to be the player that he could or should have been. But who knows? Maybe there's still time that he can show something, right? So.
Well, we're not. We didn't bring him in to score 50. I mean, it'd be
Mhm.
nice. But maybe in the rest of his Montreal career he'll get 50. But we didn't bring him in for that.
Yeah,
We brought
and
him in to be.
as long as same thing, referring back to the Marchand point, if we use him in perspective of what his expectations are and don't get hopes up, don't expect too much, you're not setting yourself up for disappointment. You know, is he that
Right.
third line center? Is he that third line guy that will excel or fourth line? Put him in the right spot and set him up to succeed.
Absolutely. And Marty does a good job. So
Mhm.
if he's playing well, we can put him up in the lineup because he scored a ton of points in
Mhm.
junior. He
Yeah,
was an exceptional player status player coming in,
yeah,
and did the pressure get to him? Who knows? But he's still there.
yeah.
So I think he could offer us a lot. So I think that trends us in the right direction. And the wild card in all this, I believe, is Jakob Dobish. Uh,
Hmm.
Again, a kid who got off to a good start. I think he won his first 6 games, which was unheard of for a Montreal rookie goalie. A bit of reality check when, some nights were a little bit tough, but he played well, all things considering, and unfortunately was thrown into playoff games against Washington, and he didn't play poorly. So, you hope that the sophomore jinx doesn't take over. He comes in a little bit more mentally prepared.
Hmm.
I think he could push Monty. If we're going to talk about, one of those things, that could be the wild card ultimately, the
Yeah,
successor
and
failure.
And I think you're right. I think the situation, like in the regular season last year, I think he played really well. I think the whole, I think it's about what you would expect from in essence, a rookie goalie. I think the situation he got into the playoffs really wasn't fair to him, and I try not to judge too hardly on that for a couple reasons. One, Washington is a good team. You know what I mean?
They were last year.
They're built they're a built playoff team. That's what their bread and butter was at that point. And I think throwing Dobesh in, last minute, this injury came up, you're gonna have to play. I think I mean, never played a game in the NHL in my life, but I can't imagine it'd be, and especially for goalies, I can't imagine it's that easy to all of a sudden have to switch mindset where hey, I'm going in, right? I mean, these guys are pros. I get it. That's what they get paid to do, but still, they're human as well. And I think that affects you.
Absolutely. But yeah, he could be the dark horse. If he plays well and takes a few extra games off Monty's workload,
Mhm.
maybe that's the driving force to put us over the top.
Yeah. And it'll build up his confidence more so that when he does, get thrown into the fire, he'll be able to handle it better because he'll have more games under his belt this year. He'll have had that experience from the playoffs last year, so he's more familiar and knows how to handle it better.
Absolutely. And again, we say year one, right? He's
Mhm.
a rookie last year, so let's hope that he's had some time of reflection and that's what pushes us forward.
Mhm.
So let's talk about the other conference quickly. Again, there are enemies in a different area.
Yeah.
We don't play them as much, although the games against them are more important than they are the Western Conference. I think New Jersey's the team to beat.
Mhm.
They seem to have added the right pieces where the pieces need to be.
Mhm.
And I think they had the right core. They had a few injuries last year. I see Carolina being, again, they win their division almost by default. They are a team where they have enough depth going up and down the lineup. They obviously had a couple of big free agent signings in the offseason. I still think they're a top team. And I look for the Rangers to rebound.
Mhm.
You can't have one of the top goalies in the league and lack of a
Yeah.
better term
Yeah.
shit the bed again.
Yeah.
So I think there's a resurgence there. They've kept some players. They got a youth movement going on. They've
Mhm.
got some good young players that were dynamic for them last year. So I look for them. Washington was a team that I think overachieved last year. They didn't have the big free agent pool that they thought they were going to have. So I see them as number four. I still see Pittsburgh as being relevant. When you have a guy that wears 87, and he's going into an Olympic year, a rejuvenation of sorts, you can't count out the Penguins when Sid the Kid's on the ice.
Isn't he coming to Montreal though?
Well, we can start the rumor now and say that hot take Sid the Kid will be a Montreal Canadian after the Olympics.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. That could be the hot take, my hot
Yeah.
take of this episode,
Yeah.
and send all the 12 viewers that we now have, not two, but the 12. We can send them into a tailspin.
Yeah.
And order your jerseys now, folks.
Yeah.
We can plan
Yeah.
the parade as well. There'll be
Yeah.
poutine
I
there.
listen, I know we're kidding around, but can you imagine if Crosby comes after whether it be the Olympic break, the trade deadline, whatever. I mean, I think we agree that if it was to happen, it's not going to be till later on in the year. And honestly, I don't think it's going to happen. But if it does, can you imagine the jersey sales? That
There'd be
there would have to be
20,000
records
people.
set.
There'd be 20,000 people in Montreal the first game he played with Crosby jerseys.
Yeah.
They unfortunately even the people in the Bell Center would have to order them from Timu because they wouldn't get them fast enough from
Yeah.
their own supplier.
Yeah.
It would just shout out to Timu. Thanks for your cheap jerseys.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
would. I'm wearing one now. I'm representing the sheriff today, Arbor
Yeah.
Jack guy. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
But it would be something that it would just
Unreal. It'd be
it,
unreal.
it would
Yeah.
shut. There might be riots.
Yeah.
You know, um, so I have Pittsburgh still being relevant. I think they missed the playoffs, but again, Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Carlson, keep them there. Goaltending is shit. They're going to struggle. 7 and 8, Columbus, I think, and Philly are at the bottom. Flip a quarter or a old recycled out of your piggy bank Canadian penny on who's seven, who's eight. They're just two teams that just can't seem to get it together.
Yeah.
Columbus goes on a tear, then they go south, then they go hot, then they go south. At the end of the day, too much inconsistencies, and they're just not a playoff team.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I would agree. I think Columbus is almost like the Metropolitan Division's version of Buffalo. Like they just can't seem to get it together, or they just seem to find a way to mess it up. Now, hopefully that's changed. I mean, they had 89 points last year. I know they didn't make the playoffs, but there was an improvement. Like what they have the year before, they had 66 points. So they had a 23-point jump, right? So maybe they're back on or sorry, not back on. Maybe they're on the right track. But uh Philly finishing last, listen, I wouldn't have an argument with that. I mean, I know I would like to think they're going to get better. I mean, you can't. They got Mitchkov. They're young, up and coming or whatever. But I tell you, my biggest problem, they just I don't know. Philly has this thing where I don't know if it's a mentality where they're thinking back to the 70s or whatever it is, but those Philly, the Philly Brood, what do they call that? The Philly
The
teams back,
Broad Street Bullies.
the Broad Street Bullies. And Tortorella messed that team up so bad. I don't know. They might be 5 years getting him out of their heads.
Yeah, I mean, they've got all these young kids. They just can't seem to piece it together. And I don't know if they're just drafting the wrong pieces or developing them wrong at the wrong time, or they can't sync them up. Mitchkov is going to be a good player in this league for years to come, but he can't do it alone.
No,
So
no.
unless they can get some more pieces in, they're a franchise that's going to struggle.
Yeah, yeah. So do you want to just go over not necessarily, I'm not going to ask you to predict 1 to 8 because that's pretty difficult, but in the conference this year, who do you think the 8 playoff teams are?
Well, I'm gonna say in our division, we're going to have at least the four and probably the five. I'm going to say Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Tampa, and Florida make it.
Hmm.
And then when you're looking at the top three in the other conference, New Jersey, Carolina, and the Rangers, I
Hmm.
think it's your 8 teams.
Yeah. And
You
and
know,
I wouldn't argue with that. I think New York, I agree because they're like Hugo 1.0, right? That's a Hughes Gordon blueprint there. And like you say, they got too much talent. I mean, that goalie, I mean, look at all the years that Carey Price, Patrick Waugh carried us. New York's going to be the same way. That goalie is phenomenal.
yeah, and Shesterkin comes to play.
Yeah.
Again, if he was a free agent tomorrow, there's 30 teams that want him.
Hmm.
So, with him, hopefully he doesn't have Henrik Lundqvist syndrome and can't just get the big one in, but he's one of the elite ones. So, shameless plug, I'd take him on our team, but I don't want to be accused of tampering. The Toronto faithful, if you fart with another team's name on it, they're going to
Yeah.
cry all the way to the
Yeah.
NHL office. But I think I think they have a resurgence. They seem to do this. They're just another team that can bring in lots of players. It's that kind of a market, and I think they make it.
Yeah.
So those are my 8 teams, 5 from our division, 3 from the other. I think it's going to be a dogfight right down to the last couple of weeks for playoff seedings to be locked up.
Mm.
But I see Montreal having a home ice spot in round one.
Wow. There's another hot take.
Yeah, so I will put all 6 brain cells on the line and give you
Yeah.
that one.
All 6 brains and all 6 viewers.
Yeah, one for each.
Yeah. So, okay. So I think we've covered pretty much everything on there. I don't know. I don't think we really need to touch the Western Conference.
We
Uh,
we can review the Western Conference as the season gets underway.
mhm,
Again, are they relevant? Yes. I mean, there's some good teams in the
mhm,
Western Conference. I'm not denying that.
mhm.
But the enemies that we got to dig in and fight every night are our conference and our division people.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many points Dallas gets or how many points Colorado gets because we don't make the playoffs or
Yeah, it has no
playoffs
bearing on
because of
us.
them.
Yeah.
So we can touch base once the season started and kind of go through the who's hot, who's not. We can touch
Mhm.
base with that. We can do a division special or a conference special, but at this point, we'll just keep it to our division, our conference for now.
Okay, sounds good. So what we'll do is we'll take a second here and then we'll come back with our final thoughts. Okay, so here we go, our final thoughts. I guess I'll let you go first, Steve. You jump in.
So we talked about the additions of new players. We talked about their impact, what they're going to bring us, and my final thought is Montreal jumps up in the standings point wise. I don't know that we climb too many teams because it's such a tight division, but I think this is a year we flirt with the century mark in points.
Yeah, and I would agree because I think as much as Montreal is improving, if you look back on what we both think that 5 teams out of the Atlantic are going to make the playoffs, uh, not just us. We're not the only ones improving. There's other teams improving, and it's going to be these are pros in the cap era. It's going to be difficult to miraculously jump, from fourth to first kind of thing. I would agree with you on that. However, having said that, I would say. I think we're in the era of a standings flip. It seems 10 years or so, it seems, you have your powerhouses, and I think we're starting to see now Florida, Tampa, as good as they're going to be. I think you can see they're starting to wane off a little bit, and you've got, teams like, Montreal, Ottawa, and even Detroit to a certain extent are starting to come up. And I think it might be as soon as this year, if not this year, I would say next year for sure, where we're going to see a standings flip where, Ottawa, Montreal, Detroit are going to be on the top, and you're going to see, the Tampas, the Torontos are going to be, fighting for the playoff spot, and then, in a couple of years are going to be, having to make the rebuild decision.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what I'll do is we're going to do our trivia question now, and you've got the answer, Steve.
So we have to go back almost 10 years to the 2016-2017 season where we won the Atlantic. We were first in our division. We were just over the 100-point barrier. First in our division, fourth in the conference, and seventh overall.
Hmm.
So 2016, 2017, they were a lot of good times, and hopefully we're trending towards that this year.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to be, like I said, I don't think we're going to win the division, but I think it's going to be a good year. And on that note, I want to thank everybody for watching another episode of Behind Enemy Lines. Join us next episode. I think it's going to be a game day episode for Wednesday's home opener, or sorry, not Wednesday's home opener, but Wednesday's season opener when the Habs are in Montreal. So thanks for watching. Please like, share, comment, and help spread the word.
Thanks very much, and as always, keep your stick on the ice.